As I was writing this section in the sermon and thinking about it, I often play music through YouTube on the TV in my office. And as soon as I was starting this, something popped up, and the call to worship was Acts chapter 2, Pentecost. And the guy's describing the moment that he came to salvation. That's kind of a Holy Spirit moment, if you will. And this guy's describing how he came to salvation. And when he heard the gospel, he felt this force coming at him with strength. And he fell over in his chair and began to speak languages that he had, or a word that he had never heard, a sound that he had never heard. And I was kind of like, that's crazy and that's great, but that's not at all how the Lord converted me. I didn't have an experience like that. And if we're not careful, we could get sucked into teaching that says you got to have an experience like Pentecost in order to know that you are saved. So let's talk about what Pentecost was not, okay? Pentecost was not a man-made experience. It was a historical event orchestrated by sovereign God. This wasn't something that they were expecting. Verse 2 tells us that it was sudden. They couldn't have ever predicted that the Spirit of God would come this way. They couldn't have ever predicted the perfection of God sending the first fruits of the kingdom on the feast of first fruits. It's beautiful. Pentecost was not evoked or contrived. It was sudden and solely an act of the sovereign God. These Jewish people, they weren't working themselves up. They weren't trying to evoke something. They wouldn't have even known what to pray for, what to ask for. And it's important in our culture today that we not seek an experience, but we seek Jesus. That we not run after an experience or a feeling, but we hold fast to the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ that is clearly written in His Word and that His Spirit brings to light in our souls. Pentecost was not a prescription for how our gatherings should look. It was rather a description of how God chose to manifest His presence at this specific gathering in history. Pentecost should not be an expected norm. It was an event where God did something new, and since that day, believers are indwelled by the Spirit of God. The theologian John Stott said, we do not need to wait for the Holy Spirit to come. He came on the day of Pentecost, and He has never left the church. Pentecost is not meant to be recreated. It was a supernatural, historical event. And it was an incredible event when God came in power and gave His Spirit, took up residence in the life of the believer. And when He indwelled the followers of Christ that day, since that day, He is indwelling His followers and His children all around the world. He's never left the building.